Sightsee is a retail shop and coffee bar in downtown Charleston that was inspired by the coast, travel, and adventure. I talked with the co-owners of that particular shop, Allyson Sutton and Joe Sadler, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Joe Sadler and Allyson Sutton, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We are super excited to chat with you. We are big fans and went to your Creative Mornings talk, and now it's like funny to be on the other side of things.
Yes, indeed. That was so much fun. And ironically, that day I did the actual talk. I was doing it right now, like it is now raining. So
Yeah.
It feels like it was years ago, but it feels like
a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go back and watch it periodically on YouTube. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that obviously you all are the co-owners of Sightsee, which is obviously a retail shop and coffee bar, which is right there on Line Street here in downtown Charleston. And I know that Sightsee is a retail shop plus a coffee bar that is greater than the sums of its parts. What are those parts right now?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I can feel that one because I feel like I'm kind of responsible for that phrasing of it, even though it's not necessarily a great way of putting it. But the idea, the reason that we say greater than the sum of its parts is that it is a retail store. And in its own right, we could just be a retail store. We have enough minutes of shop. And then separate from that, we are also a coffee bar. And a lot of people will just shorthand refer to us as a coffee shop. And what we hope to do is combine those two things that is a better and greater experience than either of those things are individually. And so when we say like greater than the sum of its parts, we mean that what Sightsee is more than 1 plus 1. It's, one, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Joel and Allyson. What are those individual experiences that you've had at a retail shop and at a coffee bar?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I think one of the things that actually inspired us to create this space is the experiences that we've had in other spaces that are kind of within the retail and coffee industries, positive and negative experiences. And, you know, with retail stores in particular that we've visited, we've, sometimes had an experience of not being in a position to purchase anything. You walk in, you kind of browse around, and then you sort of awkwardly walk out and duck your head and don't end up spending much time there or interacting with the people who work there. It's sort of a short visit. And same with coffee shops. We've had wonderful experiences where there's incredible hospitality and customer service. We've also had the flip side of not having that welcoming experience. So then we've been fortunate to travel quite a bit as well and go into places that sort of blended multiple experiences under one rooftop, whether that's, a bike repair shop that also serves beer and food, or a wine bar and flowers, or what have you. And the blending of all of those things under one roof creates, and not to use this word over and over again, but creates more of an experience and more of an engaging place where you can spend time, you can get to know the people who work there, you can chat with whoever just happens to be sitting next to you in the space, and creates almost more of a community around the space. So the good, bad, and welcoming experiences that we've had in those different environments really made us want to create our own here in Charleston.
Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic. How do you create that space right now?
Oh man,
that is
such a good question.
Yeah, that is something we deal with every single day. That balancing act of still being a really welcoming and inviting place and an inclusive place, still offering a level of hospitality to our customers, but at the same time policing and like having to almost play bouncer at the door because our brick and mortar is a very small space. It's less than 500 square feet. So we only allow one group inside at a time and sort of have to constantly monitor that. So it's a very tricky dance to someone's first experience walking through the door. We might have to say, hey, can you wait outside for a second? We're we're basically telling them not to come in. The complete opposite energy that we want to give off. But we try to make it clear that there's a reason behind that, and it is at the end of the day being done out of a spirit of community and trying to keep our community safe and keep our team safe, and that this isn't our normal MO, but we're trying to do it for the people who are coming to our shop and for the greater Charleston community to stay safe, and hopefully we do an okay job of communicating that.
Me too. It gets exhausting, but we definitely, as Allison was saying, it was a really good point, is that the thing that underlies that whole thing for us is that whether we're asking someone to stand outside for a moment because we're at capacity, or whether we're inviting them in, or whether we're reminding them to put their mask on, or we're asking them what they'd like to drink or look around, the thing underlying all of that is that we care about you and we care about the people around you. And so that whether we're telling you yes or no, that is true. And so we try because otherwise, I mean, you can imagine going out to a restaurant and the same person is the bouncer and the host and the waiter and the chef and the valet. And the different tones that each of those relationships have to set, we have to snap between instantly. But yeah, it's because we care and we try to allow that to come through no matter what we're saying.
Obviously, you all have the small brick and mortar store right there on Line Street, which I passed by numerous times. What is the tone in the community right now with COVID?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we feel a little bit like Charleston is sort of the wild, wild west when it comes to COVID. We're seeing varying degrees of precaution from individual people, from businesses, from the city itself, in terms of like policies that have or honestly have not been put into place. So it really depends, I think, on the day and on the person we're chatting with. We're certainly in a neighborhood that is an interesting mix of local community members, local residents, and then also Airbnb properties too. So that's been kind of an interesting thing to witness throughout the duration of the pandemic, is the ebb and flow of traveling to Charleston. And we're seeing more and more people travel here, some doing so in ways we would consider safe, and some coming in large groups, which is somewhat concerning from our perspective. But I don't know if you want to add.
No, that's really true. I mean, that's at the ground level the way that we experience. I certainly have thoughts more broadly on the way in which COVID is being handled from a policy perspective from the city and the state. But at our immediate experience, I think we thankfully, over time, it seems like folks have gravitated toward the places that are with whom they like share a perspective about COVID. So folks that don't take it as seriously seem to be gravitating towards businesses that also don't take it that seriously. And likewise, folks that are taking it seriously have just over time started to go to the ones that are. And that ultimately does make it a little bit easier on us because people have self-selected to obey the rules at Sightsee. Fewer people come to Sightsee expecting a no mask free for all, and so they already know what to expect when they come. So that helps a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously, it's been founded by you all, Joel and Allison. And Sightseeing aims to inspire a sense of adventure in everyday life. Let me ask you this. This might be a silly question, but do you inspire a sense of adventure through moonlighting a few hours a week doing something just for fun?
Oh man. You know, let me say it back to you a little bit in a way in which I'm hearing it to make sure is like, do we, in our stated goal of inspiring adventure in everyday life for other people, are we able to do that for ourselves, or are we being to a certain degree hypocritical? And I gotta be honest with you, it's a challenge. The level of effort it takes to create the adventure inspiring experience that we want people to have when they connect with Sightsee, I mean, honestly, does draw from the same energy reservoir that we would draw from to have those adventures ourselves. And so I think that as small business owners, that's kind of a nice reminder, Quintin, that I think we take our eye off that ball from time to time.
Yeah.
And it can be hard.
I think that's a bit of the irony of opening a travel and adventure inspired shop and brand is that, you know, we have a brick and mortar space and all of the ins and outs of running a business require us to stay here and not have, you know, a ton of our own adventures. But at the same time, I think we, because of a lot of the products we sell in our shop being very travel oriented, we end up constantly having conversations with people about their own adventures or the places that are on their list to travel, or even locally, you know, when people are visiting, giving recommendations of things to do. So we do get to live a little bit vicariously through those conversations that we have with people, which keeps us energized.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, like the adventures that we have in our everyday lives tend to revolve around what we've done with the dogs. Did we have a snuggling adventure? Did we have a walking adventure? It's basically like, you know, that's about it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And you talk about conversation and obviously people coming in asking for advice on where to go locally as far as adventures. Have you had that conversation about where you want to go for a day trip, say to Savannah or Georgetown or Port Royal?
Oh, with customers?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We have had conversations about day trips to Savannah. We've recently, I think, tried to orient those conversations around things to do in the area that are outdoor and exploring the coast and beaches, chatting with people about, you know, day trips to Botany Bay.
Yeah.
Sort of all these very natural outdoor adventures that people can do really safely, and then of course we try, if it's a nearby city, we try to have a good coffee shop and maybe some good local retail stores that they can check out while they're there too.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And, oh, that's so amazing. But let me ask you this. What is that type of conversation right now inside Sightsee?
Like well, you know, I'll tell you, the way in which that conversation often starts is that one of the things that we, as a function of just the way that the interaction works out, we'll ask somebody, do you live around here? Just, you know, what would you like to do? Oh, yeah, we got your drink. Oh, do y'all live around here? And we ask people if they live around here first rather than are you visiting? Because whenever we've been traveling, people at shops or whatnot will ask us those questions. And for some reason, you always want to be assumed as local. Like you don't want to be assumed to be a tourist. And so we try to give, even if they're wearing a t-shirt that says like, I'm from Atlanta, we'll be like, so y'all live around here? And the answer to that will then dictate where the conversation goes from there. So a lot of folks will be like, from Somerville, you know, y'all live around here? Well, yeah, we're in Somerville. We're just downtown for the weekend. or like for the day poking around. Yeah. And we frequently will give, not to call so anywhere off of the peninsula. It could be anywhere that people are just like having a day downtown. And we're frequently will give recommendations to local people about what to do nearby. In addition to just like, people that are in town from Atlanta, we'll give them recommendations about what to do here. And then we often will then be like trading stories of what to do when we're in their city. So since I've said Atlanta like 17 times, I'll just someone will say it from Atlanta, and I inevitably say something. Allison has probably heard me say this statement so many times. Oh, you got a lot of good coffee in Atlanta. I say that all the time as a lead-in, and then we start talking about coffee shops that we like in Atlanta. They may tell us about ones we haven't heard of, or the reverse. But it's always like, so do y'all live around here? And then who knows where it's going to go from there.
From there, wow. What type of conversations are you having about retail shops and coffee shops here on the peninsula? There's so many places open up around here now.
Yeah.
Yeah. We always try to tell folks, places that are somewhat in walking distance of our shop, primarily places that we know are locally owned and really a part of the community and run by people who we respect and admire. So we have a running and growing list of places we'll share with folks. Baba on Cannon, J Stark.
Oh, yes.
All friends of ours. And really like trying to share businesses that we feel are truly invested in Charleston and that are should be the top of their radar to check out while they're here.
Yeah. It's neat.
Yeah, matter of fact, I'm interviewing the folks over at J Stark actually in April for Quintin's close up, so I'm so excited about that.
Oh man, they're some of our best friends, Jess and Eric.
Yes, she's had the baby lately, so it's been kind of hard to get her, but she has the baby lately, so that's keeping her busy.
The one thing I was going to mention about recommendations and whatnot that I think you might get a kick out of is that back before COVID, after we opened, we noticed that we were giving recommendations so often and constantly just having to find a piece of paper and jot some stuff down and hand it to them that we changed our business card.
I wonder if I can find it.
Yeah, it's just right next to it. Allison will grab you one so you can see it in the thing, but we have 5 items with icons, and now on the back of our business card.
So this is
So that's the front.
And then the back will circle whatever the icon is, a shop, a place to grab a drink, eat, coffee, etc. And give, so people can leave our shop. It's kind of like a little memento of their trip to Charleston, and also a handy list, because if you're like me and you don't write it down, you'll forget immediately.
Right. It escapes your brain.
Yeah.
You talk about obviously before COVID and when you all obviously open. What is the biggest difference about that right now?
Between kind of what we were before COVID and what we are now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man. It's a long list, and some of it is slightly invisible. I'm sorry, I just jumped in on that. I would put it in 2 categories.
Okay.
One is functionally, how do we operate differently? And so we've had to make some dramatic changes and major pivots to our business model in order to survive COVID.
Yeah, last March when the pandemic first started, we shifted to online ordering only, and previously we had an online shop for our retail, but we didn't offer online ordering for our coffee and baked good menu. That you just had to come to the shop to order in person. So within one day,
24 hours
in March, we set up a whole online ordering system on our website and shifted completely to just order online, pick up on our front windowsill outside. Because our space is so small, we thought that was the safest option, which was definitely an interesting new frontier to navigate. At that time, we'd only been open for 6 months. So a lot of folks were just discovering us for the first time as an online ordering coffee shop, and had never been inside our space, didn't know that we were multiple concepts under one roof, that we had retail and that, which was sort of a challenge during that growth phase, to have people discovering your business in this very limited lens and format. And it certainly wasn't the experience that we talked about that we wanted to craft for people here. Yeah. So that's a big difference. Now we're open back up for limited capacity, but we've maintained the online ordering because we have quite a few folks who I think just it's really easy, it's convenient, it still feels super safe. They don't have to really see anyone. They can just drive by and get their coffee and keep going. So now we're sort of juggling the in-person and online, which a lot of businesses are doing now. What else?
We also switched. We were closed on Mondays, so we were only open 6 days a week prior to the pandemic.
I forgot that we were.
I know. we used to be open like 8 to 6 Tuesday through Saturday and 9 to 4 on Sundays. Closed on Mondays. So. And that was just a different world in which people, we didn't have anyway. So as soon as the pandemic hit, we went to 7 days a week because we had no idea what day of the week it was. We knew nobody else had any idea what day of the week it was. And we didn't want people to show up to Sightsee and we were closed and be like, wait, what? I had no idea it was Monday. Yeah. And so we just went 7 days a week, 8 to 2. You never have to wonder if Sightsee is open. These are the hours. You don't have to keep track of the day. Yeah, that's another change. But then, what I would say, not to belabor the point, but the other thing that I think is pretty significant in the life of Sightsee is that the pandemic and the civil rights movement over the reached what I don't want to say that it has stopped, but there was a certain height over last summer. But those two things coinciding really forced us to think about who we want to be in this community. And so when I think about how did the pandemic affect you, how did 2020 affect you, there are these physical operational things, online ordering, open 7 days a week, blah, blah, blah. But then there are also how do we want to engage with the issues that face our city as a business. And it has honed our, Allison is better at grammar than I am, and so I always get home in on it. It has honed our thinking and the way in which we communicate and the risks that we feel worth taking in what we speak out about as a business. And so I think that in many ways, what Sightsee is now is internally the same. But articulation-wise is much more engaged and outspoken than we anticipated needing to be.
Yeah, I think always had a value system through which we made decisions as a business, but that was more behind the scenes, and we've decided to make that more a part of the way we do business publicly, and to affirm those values. And hopefully that also allows us and our community to continue holding us more accountable, because when you can't see how people are making decisions, you can't really hold them quite as accountable. So that's been somewhat of a shift in terms of how we operate publicly.
Hey, who is Sightsee in this community?
Oh man, you know what? I would love for you to go around and ask 100 people that and tell us what they say. That is some information I'm paying for. Can you go out and find out who do people think we are?
The answer's probably different depending on the person, depending on the day, depending on what's happening in the world.
Yeah. I don't want to. I know what I want us to be.
Sure.
It's hard to say the degree to which we're being that.
Yeah, I think we started this business and opened our shop, because like what we talked about, wanting to create a certain kind of experience and to build some sense of community through our space, and having a brick and mortar kind of enables you and gives you that platform to create community. We also, I think, saw that at least downtown Charleston, there has been quite a shift away from local businesses towards larger retail chains. And when that happens, you lose business owners who are invested in the community, who can help, challenge the city on the decisions that are being made policy-wise, who can hire local employees who are really part of like the future of where Charleston's going. And so that was one driver for us starting, is to hopefully help shape the fabric of what Charleston looks like in the future from a local business standpoint. And I think we're learning how to kind of use the platform of having a brick and mortar and having a brand established in downtown Charleston now to start getting more vocal about the way that we want to see the city change and evolve and grow, and systems that might exist here that we feel need to be challenged. And our hope is that we can use the platform we've created to sort of engage in those conversations, to maybe be a place where, people may have at first thought we were like their cute neighborhood coffee shop, or they, like our team members who work here, or they, eventually it becomes sort of this entry point to having deeper conversations about what's happening in the city, what's happening nationally. And our goal is to be welcoming and approachable, and so people feel comfortable engaging in those conversations with us.
Yeah, I don't want to break it, but the thing, everything Allison said is exactly what that's what we think. The only thing I would add that for me personally is a big part of it, is that our brand, I don't think that you don't have to interact with Sightsee very long to get a sense that we are we're promoting a certain happy and positive environment, that this is that, and the thing that is important to us is that happiness doesn't come from a place of ignorance, or a place of like, I don't know, that it's a bit of happiness is a bit of a victory in the world that we live in. And so we do not create Sightsee as this like separation from the difficulties of life itself. And we don't want it to feel like, that there's this world in which I'm really butchering my articulation of this. This sounds,
no worries.
You can hear how this sounds in my head. It's very eloquent, but that balancing positivity, which is a valid thing, with reality, which is equally valid and often not positive, is the path that we're trying to follow with the brand. That there is a place for real talk and confrontation, and also a positive brand at the same time. That we don't consider those to be mutually exclusive, but it is a balance that's difficult to set. And I would I would hate for somebody to think that Sightsee is just a happy place. It is, but it is also a real place that wants to not distract from reality, but kind of enhance your experience by offering you also a positive environment to hang out in and be a part of.
And what are those issues here in Charleston that you welcome and actually embrace?
The issues, yeah. I mean, I'll say there are a number of them, and I'm going to interpret that to mean like, what are the issues that we think need to be confronted in Charleston that are less positive?
Oh, you can talk about that as well.
Oh, cool. I think that I think that 2020 was a wonderful year for everyone to see who they really are. And I feel like Charleston, we got to see what Charleston really is and what Charleston prioritizes and values thanks to the events of 2020 in a way that we would not have gotten a chance to otherwise. And that cuts across a number of different aspects of life. I think where I would start is around race. I think that we have experienced a city that is still unwilling to make meaningful steps to come to terms with the history of slavery and racial oppression that is happening. Of which Charleston is a bit of an epicenter. And instead, we saw in 2020 what we have seen historically, which is kind of photo opportunities and messaging and good language being circulated. We got the Calhoun statue down. Meanwhile, we increased the police budget, and we continued to feed tax dollars into a white prioritist narrative around who should travel here, who Charleston welcomes, and on race, we think that there's significant issues that need to be engaged. And then I'm sorry, I don't want to speak out of turn.
I'll also say, we have to be honest that those are all interwoven issues that I don't think we were particularly engaged in any way prior to last year outside of, our voting habits. But from a community standpoint, we were not, part of the group of boots on the ground actually trying to change the conversation and change policy and decision making and getting more involved in community action here as well. So I think we were, finally
for sure
awakened a bit more to the reality of what's happening in Charleston. So that just wanted to point that out.
No, you're absolutely right. I should. That's so true.
Yeah.
And we are continuing to learn ourselves, and the more that we learn, the more we're trying to engage these issues in more productive and long-term ways. And then the other big issue that I think 2020 illuminated in terms of the city that we live in and the priorities of the government is with COVID. And I think we learned how many lives a parking space is worth. That people's right to just, I say that because it amuses me, but the city's Charleston had an opportunity to have a transformative 2020 and take advantage of the opportunity to increase the use of outdoor space, shift from a car-centric transportation mindset to one that incorporates all modes of mobility, that and encourage and cultivate safe spaces for people to be able to interact that aren't indoors and highly contagious environments, and it failed to do so. And so now here we are in 2021, and Charleston effectively looks identical to how it did in 2019, even though we had a great opportunity to fundamentally change that for the better for lots of people. And so we also just learned that the degree to which Charleston is stuck in the rut of outdated modes of behavior, not just, and there's the thread that ties them is with race, with city planning, with the way in which we prioritize different elements of people's lives. So yeah, we feel like we wake up every day and think about the issues that deserve to be and need to be engaged with, and it's longer than, to be honest, we have the energy to engage in a lot of times.
How do you change it right now? How do you change all that, what you just said right now?
Oh my gosh, it's like you are in my head. That's the thing that, like, you just feel, how do you change it right now? Like, is that a thing? Can you change things right now? Every time it feels like, yeah, this is an easy opportunity for immediate change, it doesn't happen. And so just the question is, how quickly can any change take place whatsoever? And
I think we feel frustrated even after, a year or so of trying to focus more on some of these issues, feeling like progress isn't being made in the ways that we would hope it would be made. And so I can't even fathom the level of frustration folks who have been trying to push for these changes for years must be feeling right now, because it does feel like,
yeah,
sometimes no matter how vocal you get or how many online petitions you put out there to gather support for something, that the puppeteers in power are still just going to do things the way that they're used to doing things.
Yeah.
So I think that's often the case with any kind of civic change, is that it's like a cog in a wheel. And
I think, and my answer for myself, when I'm asking myself that very question, we ask that all the time, how can we change things right now, is that there's this saying or a mantra that we have when we were starting Sightsee, or when we're ever doing any new thing, is that it doesn't matter how slow you go as long as you do not stop. And so we just try to, whether it's continue to read, continue to keep our eyes open for new opportunities to connect to things, that we just keep one foot in front of the other. And then as soon as you see an opportunity to increase the awareness about something or partner with somebody on something, to be ready to do it. And I think that the distance between us as citizens and our city council feels a lot shorter to me now than it used to. And so in terms of changing things right now, I feel like my confidence in communicating with somebody in an elected position has gone up. But I think it's that I've tried to, maybe it's just a consolation prize, but when I get discouraged about how do we change things right now, I shift that to, like, what can I be doing right now to change things? If that might sound like the same question, but there are a lot of things, like Allyson said, and I think it really is a good reminder. We haven't been at this all that long, and so not feeling like we know that. Like, I feel like, to me, changing things right now, part of it is changing myself right now, and that is something that I can do, and so that involves reading and reflecting and all that.
I think it's also important to remind ourselves that we're engaging in local issues, both as just local citizens and also as local business owners, and as part of a neighborhood of downtown as well. And that at least motivates me to continue staying engaged and paying attention the best I can, because I think we've already seen folks, learn about something because maybe we shared it on our social media, or, we've tried to use this platform and use our physical location to bring attention to things that we care about that are happening here. And I hope that as a local business, getting more vocal about local city issues, we could maybe encourage some other businesses to do the same. I think sometimes, city council members, city officials pay a little bit more attention when feedback is coming from a business or a business owner and not just, Allyson Sutton person. It carries a little bit more weight when criticism or constructive feedback comes from a business, and I think we understand more fully the role that businesses can play in that dialogue. So I personally would love to see more local businesses becoming rabble rousers a little bit. There are certainly like kindred spirits in town who are doing that, but I think we could all get a bit more of a groundswell if there were maybe more business entities that were engaging in city discussion.
Yeah.
And, when you look at race and social justice and all these other issues that obviously Charleston and the country had to deal with over the past year, what new opportunities are you connecting with right now?
That's a great question.
Yeah. We're in a way a bit fortunate because Marcus, who runs Charleston Black Lives Matter, lives literally across the street from our shop. And so we get to end up chatting with him quite a bit about things that he's working on, initiatives that they're supporting, the East Side development work, the art auction they did recently. Yep. I mean, he's working on so many things. And so we try to, follow closely what Marcus has going on and support in any way that we can with that. Friends of Gadsden Creek is another local group that, again, to be honest, I wasn't fully aware or engaged with a year ago, and we've tried to get more engaged in what they're working on. Those are a couple ways that we're trying to continue paying attention and then sharing.
And when you look at Sightsee as a business shop, what new opportunities are you connecting with there?
In
With the Sightsee, your shop?
Opportunities like locally or just in general as a business? As
a business, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah. One that comes to mind, I think, that sort of is related to a lot of what we've talked about is our guest coffee roaster program. So we work primarily with a local coffee roaster called Springbok Coffee here in town, but then every month we rotate in a coffee from a roaster that's located outside of Charleston, and we've gotten coffee from roasters all over the country and all over the world at this point. And that's been a massive opportunity for us to showcase all of these different roasting companies and their teams and the work that they're doing, as well as the coffee farmers and producers that they're working with at origin countries. And we've tried to make sure that program has diversity baked in. So we try to work regularly with female roasters, with roasters of color, and particularly focus on roasting companies that are very transparent about their social values, the way they do business, how they pay the producers that they're getting the beans from at origin, how they treat their staff. So that is a huge opportunity, I think, for us to every single month highlight these businesses that we think are doing incredible work and doing it with a conscience. And then we get the opportunity on our end, once the coffee actually arrives here at the shop and we're serving it, we're able to have conversations with our community about these businesses and the work they're doing. We can educate folks and chat with folks about, all different layers of the coffee industry, from sustainability and environmentalism to equal pay in coffee
to colonialism and the lasting implications of theft.
Coffee touches on really everything. It touches on every possible social issue you can imagine, economic issue you can imagine. And it's sort of it's a delicious beverage that everyone is familiar with. So it's this like really interesting entry point to start like having these kind of broader, bigger, impactful conversations. And every time we get a new guest roaster on our menu, it opens up a whole new layer of that discussion, which I think is a really big opportunity for us.
And what do you hope the conversation will be about Sightsee Shop in the next 5 years?
Well, hopefully that we're still here.
Yeah, I would like that conversation to still be the present tense. I don't want it to be
right.
Like gone completely nuts. Sounds like people are like, "Oh, Joel and Allison." I don't know. I would hope that no matter what, people have had some kind of positive or rewarding or interesting experience through Sightsee, whether they've come into the shop or they've interacted with us online, that it's either opened their eyes about something in coffee, or it's introduced them to a new brand that we carry, which about 75% of the brands that we have in our retail store are woman-owned brands, which is exciting as well. So hopefully it brings more support to some of those brands. I mean, I just kind of would like to see Sightsee over the next several years create a ripple effect for all of the companies that we're able to come in contact with, whether it's coffee roasters or product-based brands, that we continue to just grow our community here in Charleston, but also beyond, because we come into contact with people all over the world through what we're doing. And I hope whoever comes across that feels like either their eyes were open to something they never knew before, they were inspired, they were motivated, or they just had a great conversation and a great cup of coffee, and they felt really welcomed and positive and a part of something.
Yeah, I think that there's a dominant way of thinking about business that is as though you're setting out just to build the biggest ship in the harbor, and we're not trying to build the biggest ship in the harbor. We're trying to raise the tide. And that is a fundamentally different perspective on what it means to like grow a business. That if we, in 5 years, if the conversation was, damn, Joel and Allison are really rich, but things in Charleston have only gotten worse, that would not be a success story. Sightsee's success and the success of the community that we are in, we want to always be related. That we don't want our business success in any way to be at the expense of the world that we want to see happen around us. And so we're constantly thinking about that, so that if, like, in 5 years, I would want, and just imagine any conversation could happen. I would love if someone were saying, I'm so glad that Sightsee is still around, because I am glad about the changes that they have been able to participate in making happen in this community.
And let me ask you quickly, with the brands that you carry on your website, which one of those brands describes you individually?
I like this question.
That's a great question.
If we could kind of like capture our personality in one product, I feel like I could grab one right now and show it to you for myself.
I'm so curious about which one you're gonna
Could you pick one?
Like, what if we pick the same one?
Can we do that? Can we do that real quick? All right, because we're here in the shop, and it's all. I'm going to grab the one that I think that I the most like personally connected to.
Oh my gosh! Okay, you ready?
Yeah. At least we're not going to the same one yet.
What are you thinking?
Live TV, folks.
Oh, Quintin, this is my favorite game yet. No one has ever asked us that.
Wow.
All right, who wants to go first?
Go for it.
All right. So this is a wooden toy.
Okay.
That is an RV.
Oh yes.
And I love it because I love road trips.
Sure.
And when Allison and I first met, and when we got our second dog, also just I had this image in my head of us driving around the West with our dogs in the car. I could picture the red hills and the sunset and the open road. This is true. I would think about this. And a year or so before we ended up starting Sightsee, we had the opportunity to drive to California and back in our station wagon with our two dogs. And it was like as close as you can literally come to a dream come true, was that. And whenever I see this, it reminds me of that trip. And it makes me want to do it again. And so when I think about all the stuff we have in the shop, I feel like there's a little bit of Joel in this one.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Mine's
Amazing.
a lot bigger.
Yeah.
I grabbed this blanket. This is a woman-owned brand called Nipomo. She's based out of California and Mexico.
Oh, great.
And they're these beautiful hand-woven blankets for the beach or for picnic. They hand make the leather straps that hold them, but the fabric the yarn that they're woven with is actually made using fabric scraps from fashion manufacturing that they then pull down and turn into yarn and weave into these blankets. So for me personally, I really care about sustainability and environmental impact, and this represents
women-owned brands
and supporting female entrepreneurs, building community with other women entrepreneurs, and she also works with traditional weavers in Mexico, family weavers down there, and pays them fairly for their work. And so I just love what the brand represents, and it resonates a lot with me, and I think how I try to run our business here at Sightsee. So this blanket would, and I love picnics and going to the beach. So
yeah, it's something we could use.
That's
Yeah, speaking of the beach, I was just at Sullivan's Island on Thursday, which is my favorite place in Charleston.
That's glorious.
Oh my God, yeah, it's my favorite place too.
Yeah, I just love it out there. It's amazing. Well, Joel Sadler and Allyson Sutton, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much, Quintin.
This was the highlight of our week.
Yeah, for sure. You're a great question asker and a very tolerant listener. I appreciate you. I appreciate letting us meander a little bit and speak off the cuff a bit. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, anytime. Just let me know.
All right. Well, cheers.
Yeah. Thank you.